Okay, so you have some requirements for this room, and I'm gonna walk you through those real fast. One thing I want you to do first is give your walls some depth. To do that, you're gonna line up, let me draw this horizon line, kind of went away right there. You're gonna line up the top of the wall on the right-hand side with vanishing point number 2, and I just want you to draw a little orthogonal line from the bottom of the wall and the top of the wall to the vanishing point. And just close those orthogonals off with a parallel line. And that's going to give your wall a little bit of depth. As you can see, now it's got just a little edge to it. You're going to do that on the other side as well. So I'm going to line up the ruler with VP1, the top of this wall. Take an orthogonal from the top and bottom and close that with a parallel line. So our wall has some depth. Let's do it on the floor too. Where the wall meets the floor, I just want you to take a parallel line to the edge of the paper. Just taking it straight down, so basically you're just extending that wall line on either side. On the right hand side, take it to vanishing point number 2. On the left, take it to vanishing point number 1. So now our floor has a little depth too. So one of the things you have to do is add a hole in the floor. So to do that, you can make your hole in the floor as big as you want. Let me see if I can zoom in a little. Basically, all you're going to be doing, like I said, is using the vanishing points to create these orthogonal lines. So I'm going to make my hole in the floor right below the corner line, and I'm just going to draw a line up with vanishing point number 1. That's going to be the edge of my hole in the floor. And so the sides of this are going to go to VP2. So go ahead and line up your ruler with the line that you just drew with vanishing point number 2. So the other side will also go to vanishing point 2. And then the other, line up the line with vanishing point number 1. Create your orthogonal line. And if this line didn't reach all the way, just make sure you go ahead and extend that. So now I have, well, it could be a rug on the floor, couldn't it? But it's going to be a hole. So we're going to drop a line down to give it some depth. So from the back side of this square we just drew, I'm going to drop a line down. It's parallel to the edges of my paper. So the vertical lines are pretty much straight up and down. Then I'm going to take the bottom of this line over to vanishing point number 1. I'm going to stop when I hit the edge of my floor hole, and then I'm going to do that on the other side as well. So now I have a hole in the floor. This is where you can add surreal things like vines and whatnot coming up through the floor. You have some other things that you need to add in there. There's at least 3 spheres that either sit or float in your space. So obviously a sphere is not going to go to a vanishing point. You're just going to draw it. It could be sitting on the floor. It could be floating above your room. So at least 3 spheres. And you can use chiaroscuro to give those the illusion of form. The next thing that you are required to have is a window on at least on each wall. So to create the window, you're following those same procedures, orthogonal lines and vertical lines that are parallel. So let's put a window on this right-hand wall. So I'm just going to take a line straight down. It's parallel. And I'm going to take the bottom of this line to vanishing point number 1 and the top as well. My sphere is hanging out in the window. And now I'm just going to close that edge of that window with a parallel line. Now if I want this window to have depth, I'm gonna take like a window sill that you can see inside there. I'm gonna have to take the corner to vanishing point number 2. So lining up the corner there with an orthogonal line. I'll take a straight line up. And now the bottom of the windowsill will have to go to the opposite vanishing point. So basically every line that you draw, like I said, is going to a vanishing point. Every diagonal line is going to a vanishing point. So there's window number 1, window number 2. There's a lot of commotion out in the hall. I don't know if you can hear it. Crazy people. You're going to take the top of that window to vanishing point number 2 and the bottom. Close it with the parallel line. You can give that window depth. Ooh, look, I just realized you could see the top of this window too. Possibly on the other side. I got distracted, shiny. So actually, I could actually see underneath this window as well. So I could take an orthogonal from the corner to vanishing point number 2. So I could see the top and bottom because it's right on the horizon line. It kind of depends on where you put your window. So on this one, I'm going to be able to see the other side. So I'm going to take it to vanishing point number 1, draw my parallel line, and the tops of those can go to vanishing point number 2, which is on the opposite side. So that is how you would make your windows in your room. The other thing you have to have is at least 2 boxes in 2-point perspective. So they can be floating in your room, they can be sitting on the floor, they can be inside your floating window. So just refer back to that video, the first one on the review. So if I did a box here that's just hanging out, I would draw my vertical line, and then the top of that box would go to each vanishing point. Close the sides with vertical lines. This edge would go to vanishing point number 1, and this one would go to vanishing point number 2. So I could have a box inside my window. And then you're going to look at the examples to add surreal elements to your room. So hopefully if you can go back and just watch the procedures, each one of these lines is going to either vanishing point number 1 or vanishing point number 2. And it kind of depends on where you are. Like if you're putting your window in here, you can't see the other side of this window because of the perspective. So just keep that in mind. And then you can start adding your things that might crawl into the space, wrap around, etc. Be creative. Have fun. Email me with questions.